Yeah, I'm going to show you how to correct little spots on your image. I have this gorgeous vintage watercolor, and I'll link the site that I use to find things like this below for you. These are all in the public domain, so I can use them commercially, which is awesome. And I'm going to print it on an envelope liner for one of my clients. So I've opened it here in Adobe Photoshop, and I'm going to use the clone stamp tool, which is just so good for fixing little tiny spots like this, especially in watercolor images where you have a lot of colors and lines blending into each other. So this is the clone stamp tool right here. It looks like a little stamp, and you'll get a little circle, but if you try to click anywhere, you're going to get an error message because the area to clone has not been defined. And in order to do that, you have to alt click on something. So let's start with this really big dot kind of in the center right here. We want to make sure our circle is as small as possible, but to still cover the full image. So I'm going to make it a little smaller. I think that will work really well. And the first thing we're going to do is alt click on the area of the image that we want to clone. As you can see, we have like a faint line going through this. So I'm going to try and clone an area that includes that line that's right next to the area. So it's going to get all the exact colors of the area that we want. So I'll alt click right here, and you can see that target comes up. And then I'm going to pull my cursor down over that dot, and it's basically going to clone what was in that target space for me. Exactly. So the first time I click, it's going to clone what was in that target space. And then if I move to the right, it'll clone whatever was to the right of that target space. If I move to the left, it'll clone whatever was to the left of that, etc. But since this is the first one, you can see we have that line because that was the target space. So once I do, I'm just going to do one click right here, and then that dot is pretty much entirely gone. If you want to do this very, very subtly, you can change like the opacity and the flow and things like that to make it a little less crisp. But basically, I'm just going to click on that twice and it's going to be gone. So if I move over to do this one, I'm still using a target area of over here. So I want to redefine the target area each time when I move around the image. So I'll redefine the target area right here and clone that. I'm going to click twice because I feel like it gets a little better coverage. I'm going to redefine the target area here. And this is a really cool tool that you can use for things like this, but you could also use it to like clone if someone's got their eyes closed in one picture. You could bring over a picture where their eyes aren't closed and clone them into a picture where everyone else's eyes are open. So I think it's a really cool tool that you can use. I use it to get hair and stuff out of my watercolors when I scan them in. I use it to copy maybe a leaf if I want to add a leaf and I want to copy one of the leaves that's already in the image. I'll use that. So it can basically copy anything that's already in the image, and you can use that for generation purposes, but you can also use it for correction purposes like we're doing here. So I'm going to redefine my clone area, click here, and I'll just use this to cover up. To see how we have all of this kind of striping here, we want to make sure we mimic that. And it's done beautifully, whereas we don't have a lot of striping here, so we don't really need to mimic that as much. But basically this just helps you get the exact right tone, especially when there's a lot of different tones. Like there's just so many different white, cream, ivory colors in this, some browns in the striping, details on the flowers. So we want to get those as much as possible to look accurate, so it doesn't look like we just, colored over this with a random color, but it looks like the actual original image. So we're never going to get this to be 100%. It's kind of got that vintage feel, which I like, but we covered up a lot of those really egregious spots, and I think this is going to print really well on my envelope liner. So let me know what other questions you have about using Photoshop or any Adobe programs. I have a whole playlist here if you're interested in becoming a stationery designer. I have a ton of resources here. If you want vintage public domain illustrations like this one, I've linked the source for those in the description of this video as well. Thanks everyone.